I think about my purpose, beauty is a force for good, and creating a joy platform, um, I then, with my consumer targeting, was very thoughtful in targeting multi generational families because we have a responsibility as the number one beauty retailer to make beauty the healthy space it can be for all consumers. Well, good morning, everyone. So, I'm Scottish. I apologize. My accent is thick, and there's no subtitles in real life, sadly. And yeah, so I guess I've been in the brand building business for a long time now. Since I was 21, I started with P&G. And I didn't start in marketing in my first couple of years. Actually, I was in IT and supply chain. Go figure. I rolled out SAP across our beauty care plants. And after 5 years, someone nabbed me at a conference and said, "What are you doing in IT?" I was like, "It's the center of the world. What do you mean?" And she said, "I think you're either in sales or in marketing." So I was like, "Whoops." So 6 months later, I relocated to Geneva, Switzerland, actually, with that role, and I started my marketing journey. And I spent 16 years in P&G. I worked in global, local, regional roles. I worked in sales, marketing, IT, supply chain, and fundamentally, at the end of 16 years, like, what is next? And that's when I moved to Vertu to become a CMO, and then I joined Samsung afterwards. Now, why am I telling you this? Is that it's the breadth that's probably made my journey the most interesting and the one which really helps my business today. When I started in Samsung, I didn't start in marketing. Actually, I was the head of strategy and transformation. So it's just that when you're a brand builder, you have to develop strategies to build your brands. And when I met my CEO at the time, he's like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, we got to have you in a different role." And he created a role there and then called strategy and transformation. And that took me from London all the way to New Jersey. Woo! Went out in the world. And actually, I then oversaw incubation, innovation incubation. How cool is that? So you talk about that today. And then I went back to marketing too. So all of that is just to tell you that the path is not linear. The path really is meant to have these zigs and zags so that you one day will have the amazing breadth of experience so that when you are sitting at a table and one has to make a decision, you can reflect on the days I was in a beauty care plant at the age of 22 in supply chain, or the days I was running incubation. And it makes me a better marketing leader and a brand builder. So, oh God, I'm getting on and on. Sorry, Matthew, but my role today isn't just a classic marketing role. I do everything that marketeers do in my current role, but I also overlook e-commerce. I also overlook guest experiences, like you'll notice customer services. And I also oversee our financial credit card business as well. So it's actually quite a diverse role. That is why all that history I've just told you about is really critical. I don't think I could be doing this role if I hadn't had those years of experience.
Well, and this is sort of a perfect segue and why, I kicked off saying all these elements are what build a brand. You have had, at different levels, rising to leadership levels, you've sat in many of the different chairs. This ownership of brand is a tricky thing because of that. So I love how you are, in my opinion, Michelle, kind of uniquely positioned to talk about what does it take when this ownership of the brand, when everything influences the brand, but the ownership is not always clear, or it's given to marketing and yet all these other things influence it. How do you do it? What do organizations need to do, especially the hard and non-obvious things, to really make the brand rise with all the different players that take a role in it?
I love this question because, if I was a classic marketeer, I might tell you it's all about brand position and campaigns. It is that, and, we're business leaders. We're there fundamentally to drive the P&L of our brand. It's a business. And that was one of the beautiful things I learned at the age of 25 when I started in my career as an assistant brand manager. And so I'll give you an example. When you think about all your owned assets that are free and you can start communicating about your next big event, I know what that takes to get that through supply chain. I know it's not easy when someone has to pick it and there's robots that are transferring the items across the DC. All of that really, really matters. So First of all, you're running a business if you're a brand builder. And it just so happens you may be focusing on one or a few brands. And I say that not lightly. I work with over 600 brands, Matthew. You know, Ulta Beauty is the nation's largest beauty specialty retailer. And with that, we have the privilege of building 600 brands to do that role. And so when I'm sitting down with any chief commercial officer or chief brand marketing officer, I often talk about a brand building framework. So we'll know the classic ones of the who, what, how. That's a classic brand building framework that many people have referenced over the years, but it has evolved. So now, because of the change of times, thank goodness, the why and the purpose is at the heart and soul of that. So it's the why and the who, what, how. And so what do I mean by purpose? Purpose is not something that's like flaky and you put up on the back wall. It is something that spurs you on, something that makes you get up early on a Monday morning. For perspective, I flew through the night to get here. You need to have purpose to make calls and choices like that. And so for me, knowing what your brand stands for in your consumer's life, for us in beauty care, it's all about the possibilities. It's all about helping people live their best life through beauty and beauty being a force for good for all. I know my consumers I'm targeting. I know how I'm going to target them. And then I'm able to join all the dots across there. It's so important that if you have a strategy head on, anyone here work in strategy and innovation space? Right. So we know that we target the consumers with the highest growth potential, right? That's a strategic play. But you also have a purpose that's innate to your brand. So it's a chicken or egg story. What comes first? Do you create a purpose and then tailor it to your consumers' growth projections? Or do you create a purpose that matches your consumer growth projections? That is the beauty of strategy and marketing.
Can you give us an example of where you've shifted one or the other, recognized how you adapt the purpose and the strategy together at any
That's
one
a
of the
great
places you've
question.
been?
Well, let's talk about Ulta Beauty right now. And so for me right now, beauty has, unlike other categories, it's an emotional category that really unlocks possibilities for our guests. So when I look at the purpose that we have as beauty as a force for good for all, and I'm probably jumping ahead a bit, Matthew, in this one, but when I initially started my role a year ago, the first thing people will be tempted to do is to work on the easy stuff, right? The quick, easy fixes, your go-to-market strategies and whatever, and get them into play. Do you put on more advertising? Do more social? Do you sign up more creators, etc.? I decided to take a parallel work stream to elevate our brand purpose to what we call the Joy Project, which is a program that is designed to bring more joy to our guests' daily lives, whilst at the same time, parallel pathing, ensuring that I have the smartest, highest ROI go-to-market plan out there, that my loyalty program continues growing, and all the good stuff that everyone does day to day. And so for me, because of this beauty is a force for good for all and the Joy campaign, I then was very choiceful in who I was targeting. And one good example is Ulta Beauty is probably renowned in the industry as a destination where everyone feels safe, they feel seen and heard. And you wouldn't be surprised to go into an Ulta Beauty and you'll see a granddaughter, a mother, and a grandma together shopping. It's the most beautiful thing you'll ever see. It's giving me goosebumps thinking about it. Because the grandmother's sharing her tips, the mom's sharing her tips. Guess what? The daughter, the 12-year-old's probably sharing her tips. And she's probably giving us get ready with me tips better than other way.
She's got her own channel on YouTube.
She's much more
TikTok.
evolved. They are much more evolved. And so when I think about my purpose, beauty is a force for good, and creating a joy platform, I then, with my consumer targeting, was very thoughtful in targeting multi-generational families, because we have a responsibility as the #1 beauty retailer to make beauty the healthiest space it can be for all consumers. And talking about it from a joyful place, really elevates that message. So I don't know if I really answered your question there, but I want you to understand the complexity there. There is inherent complexity that, gosh, if it was easy, then they wouldn't have people like us working on it, right?
What about on that, a little more tactical loyalty?
Yeah.
Huge part. Any brand is hoping to get loyal consumers. I asked at the start. I've got people who have been back to BRITE for years. You know, every brand is hoping to do that. Ulta Beauty has a renowned retail loyalty program. You know, how do you do that maybe a bit strategically, but also operationally? What are your keys to making, you know, the combination of loyal customers, but then also connected with you through the loyalty program, and how do you make that happen?
Yeah, so,
and what can others learn, obviously,
yeah.
from what you've done?
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. We're obsessed by loyalty. So Ulta Beauty started out 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, and so did our loyalty program. You know, it was always key to the value proposition of Ulta Beauty. And the original founders, two founders, their whole mission and vision was to disrupt the beauty industry. They really wanted to recreate a shopping experience that mirrored how beauty shoppers want to shop. So imagine 30 years ago, you would not have seen all categories, all price points in one place. That is what Ulta Beauty transformed 30 years ago and continues to do that with the loyalty program. And one key thing that we do from top to bottom, bottom up, is that everyone is an owner of loyalty in our company. Isn't that? And it's not just words. I mean, of course, loyalty comes under me. And I have an amazing leader, Kelly Mahoney, who oversees loyalty. But when we go into store and we do store visits, we talk to the associates that work there and they quote their loyalty numbers. Isn't that amazing? Like, it really starts from the bottom and then infuses its way up and works its way down again. We have arguably one of the largest programs in the nation, over 43.3 active loyalty members, 43.3 million. Isn't that amazing? And so our first party data is just outstanding. And that's why we can afford the luxury of working with the best brands in the world, because they know that we really have access to the best beauty enthusiast data out there, and we can help build their brands. So that is like the vision, the strategy, and a culture infusion that I just mentioned there. But I think tactically, what does it mean? So I care about how large my consumer database is. I care about how much they spend. I care how often they shop. And I care about the mix of their basket, the size of their basket. I care about if they buy the latest Serena Williams, Serena Williams just launched a beauty line. If they buy the latest skin tint from Serena Williams, what else do they buy? The hero, the halo story. So that's tactical. That's how I'm really measuring the KPIs. And then I have real action plans to move those KPIs. So I will be able to tell you, what am I doing to acquire new members? What am I doing to engage, retain, and reactivate members that are maybe less engaged? And we have test and learn plans. We know which ones work better than others. We know which ones work better on the East Coast versus the West Coast. It's pretty phenomenal, the data insights that we have. And the only reason why we've got 43.3 million members is because actually it is our focus. And like anything in life, what you focus on is what you'll get back. And so if you are working in a similar program, it is about having a team that's dedicated, a team that knows their KPIs, and a team that feels interconnected with the entire organization on that mission. All right, yeah, a lot of details there, sorry.
Well, and I mean, in part, you've used that to do, for my first time, I began working at the Brand Center in 2009. The first time I moderated a panel, it was called Every Brand is Now a Media Company, right? Which was what was happening as user-generated content was coming out, and everyone, YouTube was popular, social media had burst into the scene effectively at that point. But the reality is, everyone's putting content out, but it's still, many of them are not true media companies, haven't sort of operationalized that into a business model that generates revenue. Red Bull, becomes the sort of classic example of a brand that has literally built a media company and a revenue driver. You guys have adapted, I think in part through the loyalty program, a thing called UB Media.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about that and this, where can you find opportunities to expand your business model into areas you hadn't thought of before?
Yeah, so right. So for those working in strategy, when you are thinking about growing your business, you're really thinking about expanding your brand value proposition. So we know we have the rewardiest loyalty program out there with over 43.3 million members. So a natural place and source of growth, a natural adjacency was the retail media network space. You see, with building over 600 brands, they want access to your first party data. Well, we can't give them that. That's not what we do. So for very obvious reasons. So what we do offer is the ability to build their brands using offline and online in our space, the ability to leverage our first party data so that we can create campaigns that target the guests who have a higher affinity and more likely purchase intent with those brands. We create display ads. We have space in our app and our .com. We buy social for these brands. And we're able to demonstrate significant return on investment. It's got to the point now that we have over 300 brands that have had campaigns with us, and it continues to grow. So we're very, very excited about what we're seeing in UB Media. But remember, just like brand building, it goes back to what your purpose is. So I have like a consumer purpose, and I also have a brand building purpose. I want to build the brands that are sitting in my store today. A retail media network allows me to do that, hands down, with the best data. So we're very, very excited about this, but it takes new skills, new organization structure. Like any adjacency, you can't just slot it in and your normal media team do it. Because what's critical is that you're almost like a consultant to your brands that you operate with. You're consulting them on best practices and how to really move the dial. So it requires a different skill set that maybe you won't have in your core business and that you have to really amplify as you go forward.
Great. I'll begin to take questions from the audience soon, so hopefully those are percolating already. We have some Q&A mics that'll go around as we get to that. Can't sort of talk about things, given we're brand innovation technology, without getting a little into, emerging technologies and how they're playing a role, how you view them as a marketer, I think, and then maybe an example of how you're utilizing them, again, either at Ulta or other brands you've been in. Where are things like AI or, right, in the beauty category, augmented reality, lipstick try-ons, those kind of things. What's your perspective? How do you view them as a marketer? How are you trying to integrate and analyze and use those?
I can start with big picture on innovation. I would recommend anyone that works in innovation incubation, create a pipeline process that allows you to source all insights that you get and then that you can filter it through a data and gate process and understand which ones are more meaningful. And once you understand the desired guest experience you're after, tools like AI or AR and VR might be critical enablers for you. So for me, as a brand builder and as a leader in the business, I'm always working on my long-term strategy, 3 years out, always an eye on the future, and then always thinking about my guest experience. And what I didn't mention earlier is that guest CX, GX, however you want to call it, really is something that if you run a retailer, you're an operator, you have insights daily, weekly. And you need to understand how is your experience showing up. Then you have to be able to address short-term opportunities and long-term opportunities. So let's talk about the long-term opportunities here. So for us, we obviously are working on AI, AR, and VR. We have virtual try-on tools. And the reason why is that back in the pandemic, we realized that beauty enthusiasts still wanted to interact with our beautiful brands, and they still wanted education, but they weren't really given the opportunity to do that. Fast forward to now, even though that stores are all open, people still want to try on. They want to try on a new lipstick. They want to try and get a foundation color matching service, or they might want to try what a new haircut will look like before getting into the store. And that is because guests are shopping differently now. And yes, I know that we all as leaders in this space, we understand the shopping journey has evolved. We all talked about it 10 years ago, maybe not 10, maybe 15, 20 years ago with Google and its impact and how people would be online searching. Well, it's back and forth, back and forth. And so for us, we're seeing tremendous growth in these tools. I do want to talk about their guest facing tools, but I use AI a lot behind the scenes because I run customer services, our guest services. And so I need to be able to synthesize 6,000 comments a week. And someone will tell me, you know what, I really don't like it when I go to the restroom. Or I really don't like it when they ask for my telephone number when I'm wanting to redeem my points. It's all these little small things that can all add up when it comes to guest experience. And so I tell you that to illustrate the point that innovation is a beautiful and it is maybe a 1 to 3 year plan, but your day to day experience and how you shop with your guests is everything. And I'm leveraging the best innovation tools out there to help me understand in the moment what I can do differently. And remember, I own our e commerce business. I actually can change things in an hour's time. I can move things around in the app because people are telling me I'm not seeing that promo or this and that. So, innovation, yes, is very exciting, but I would try and counsel everyone. You got to do both at the same time. And that is where the magic lies in a true leader, being able to toggle between the short term innovation needs and the long term innovation needs.